This time of year, you see bows everywhere, from gifts under the tree to wreaths on front doors. Today, I'm going to show you how to create the perfect bow for every occasion. Let's get started. The first bow is a simple, easy bow, and there's no tying involved. Begin by creating one large loop. I'm going to be using a 2.5-inch wired ribbon. The loop portion will become your 2 bow loops, so you can determine how large you'd like the bow to be, and then trim off your excess ribbon. Make sure the pretty side of your ribbon is facing upward. Pinch together the center of your loop and tails. Use a piece of wire to secure the center really tightly. Then take a small piece of ribbon and fold the edges towards the center. Now secure the edges with glue. Next, wrap it around the center of the bow, making sure to cover the wire. Secure this piece with hot glue and trim off the excess. Fold the ends of your ribbon in half and make a diagonal cut. This is called a dovetail edge. Voila! Let's make a fun, fluffy pom-pom bow. I'm using a 1.5-inch wired ribbon. Take your ribbon in your hand and create a loop to your desired diameter. I'm going to use about 5 inches in diameter. I like to flatten my loop and then continue wrapping around this loop until you have about 8 loops total. Now the more loops, the more full your bow will be. Now go ahead and cut shallow notches on each corner of your bow. This is going to reduce the bulk when we secure the bow together. Next, bring the notched edges of the ribbon loop together in the center. Now secure the notched center with a piece of string or wire and tie it tightly. You'll want to leave just enough wire or string that you can attach it to your gift. Working on one side of the bow, pull out the innermost loop and then twist it to the right. Now go ahead and pull out the next innermost loop and twist it to the left. Continue doing this until all the loops on one side have been twisted. Let's go ahead and repeat this for the other side of the bow. Now fluff and adjust the bow loops until you're happy with the end result. You can make this no-tie layered bow with 2 or 3 different ribbons of varying widths. It's really up to you. First, you'll want to create a loop the desired width of your finished bow. I always like to keep in mind the size of my gift or the wreath that I'll be applying my bow to. Now go ahead and secure this loop with hot glue. Next, we'll create a second loop which is slightly smaller than the first, and you'll want to secure this one with hot glue as well. Layer the loops on top of each other with the larger at the base. Identify the center of the loops and you can pinch or pleat them together and secure them tightly with a piece of wire. Then take a smaller piece of ribbon. I'm going to use my base ribbon, but you can use whichever ribbon you want. Fold the 2 edges inward, and this is going to make a narrower width, and we're going to secure it with glue. Wrap this piece around the center portion of your bow and secure it with hot glue. To make the tails of this bow, cut 2 pieces of the base ribbon to your desired length. Next, we're going to cut 2 pieces of the top ribbon slightly shorter than the other 2 ribbons. Let's go ahead and layer a short ribbon on top of each long ribbon and glue our flush edges together. If you like the look, you can create a little pleat on the top edge of the ribbon to give your tails some volume. But you can also leave them flat if you prefer. Position your tails at the center back of your bow and secure them with glue. Now cut your ribbon ends at a slight angle for a pretty finish. I love this bow because it's the perfect way to use up ribbon odds and ends that you have left over from your other projects. Plus, it's such a playful bow that infuses a huge dose of color and pattern. To begin, decide how wide you want your bow to be. Now begin cutting all of your ribbon scraps roughly the same length. It doesn't have to be perfect, you can eyeball it. I'm using a variety of ribbon widths, colors, and textures, and that's what makes this bow so fun. Now once your scraps are cut, start with your thicker ribbons and position them in an X. Now continue layering all your ribbons in the X formation, saving the really narrow ribbons for the top layers. Now take a piece of string or ribbon and tie a knot in the middle of your ribbon X. This is going to secure all of your ribbon scraps together. Tie a tight knot on the back side of the ribbons. I'm using the ribbon I want to tie the bow onto the package with, so I'm keeping the tails nice and long. Now once you tie your knot, you can fluff out your ribbons and trim your edges for the finishing touch. This 6-loop bow is the perfect bow for adorning a wreath. It has a classic look, but the 6 loops give it a little something special. For this bow, I'm going to be using a 2.5-inch wired ribbon. Once again, decide how wide you want your bow to be and make one loop that desired diameter. I want my bow to be about 8 inches wide. Now wrap around that loop 2 more times so that you have 3 loops total. Make sure to start and stop the ribbon loops a little bit before the center to start and a little bit after to finish. That way, when you pinch the bow in the center, your ribbon ends are going to stay secured and your loops won't come undone. For your ribbon tails, fold a piece of ribbon in half just longer than your desired finished length and cut it. Now set the tails aside. Let's go ahead and pinch the center of the bow. Now, depending on the thickness of your ribbon, you can make a pretty pleat or you can just gather it easily. Now pinch the center of your folded ribbon tails and hold it to the back of your pinched bow. You'll want to use a piece of pipe cleaner or a piece of wire to secure everything together really tightly. You can trim and flatten your wire ends, or I'm going to keep my pipe cleaner tails long so I can easily attach it to my wreath once I'm finished. For the center of the bow, take a shorter piece of ribbon and tie a loose knot in the middle. Wrap it around the center of the loops and through the tails. If you've left your pipe cleaner tails, just pull them out of the way. Secure the knot with glue and trim the ribbon. Working on one side of the bow, you'll want to pull out the innermost loop and pull it over to one side. Next, pull out the next innermost loop and pull it to the other side. This is going to leave the top loop in the center. Repeat this process for the other side. Now we can fluff and adjust your loops until you're happy with the look. I like to dovetail my ribbon edges by folding the end in half and then making a diagonal cut up towards the center. And there you have it. This classic gift bow is timeless and it's actually pretty simple once you get the hang of it. I'm going to use a 1-inch thick silk ribbon, but you could use a slightly thicker, stiffer, or even a wired ribbon. To begin, I'm going to cut 3 10-inch long ribbons. Now cut 3 9-inch long ribbons. Once your ribbons are all cut, we're going to work with one ribbon at a time. Take the top of your ribbon and fold it up and around the center of your ribbon, creating a little arch. Repeat this process with the other end of the ribbon. You're creating a little infinity or figure 8 symbol. Overlap the edges just slightly and glue the edges to the center of the ribbon to hold the loops in place. Repeat this process for all of your pieces of ribbon. Begin by layering 2 of your largest loop pieces in a cross shape and glue them in place. Now you can add the last large loop piece in an X shape on top of those. Repeat this process with your 3 smaller loops, gluing them on top of the larger loops. Once you have all 6 loops arranged and secured, you can create one last singular loop to place in the center. Cut a small piece and fold one small loop and secure it with glue. Then glue in the very center of your bow to finish. Now this bow is a real showstopper and it's perfect for topping your tree. Take 2 2.5-inch wired ribbons and layer them, treating them as one. Start by making one loop in your hand, the desired fullness that you want all of your loops to be. Since these ribbons have one pretty side, we need to always make sure that the right side is facing up. So after we make our first loop, we're going to make a little twist in the ribbon so that the right side is facing upward. Now create another loop and twist it again. Continue making these loops and twisting your ribbon until you have a total of 8 loops. You should have 4 on each side. Make one large loop, and this is going to end up being your ribbon tails. Now I'm going to use a pipe cleaner to wrap through all of the loops and tie it tightly. Now you can trim off your excess ribbon. To fluff your bow, we are going to start on the bottom of the bow and separate the 2 ribbons of each loop. Pull one ribbon loop to the right and the other ribbon loop to the left. Then with the next loop, do the opposite so that the different ribbons are equally dispersed. Continue pulling apart all of your loops until they're all separated. Now cut your large loop in half to create your tails. I like to trim the ends off at an angle just to give them a nice finish. Fluff all your loops until you're happy with the finished look.